Hello there, and welcome to another update for the startup. I'll quickly go over what I did the last 2 weeks. This will be the new pitch that I did to get some funding, 2 incubator updates I applied to, and also showing a little bit of the progress on the website and the backend and stuff to the extent I can show it. All right, let's get started with maybe the front end changes because these are like the most obvious. Let's switch to this view. So this is the very bare bones MVP view, obviously without any products yet. This is very roughly how the site might look. So you have a big logo, a search bar, and then a list of products. Ideally with a search here that you entered, right? The search doesn't work right now because there's no product, no backend connected to it yet. But in the future, this will be filled with products and the search will actually work. At least for the MVP version, I will have like a selected, like maybe 300 products or so list. So that's the most visible progress on the product. Now, I did some work on the backend as well, mainly on the database, thinking about, okay, what are the database structure, basically, what are the type of information that I need to collect. And then I set up the database. And I have to say, this was more difficult than I initially expected because I wanted to do it properly, even if it's just MVP, right? So obviously I could have saved a lot of time by just doing like the bare minimum. But I chose to do it properly, which means I kept the database private, which meant that you cannot really directly access the database. So I needed to set up a separate thing, which is called like a EC2 instance on Amazon. This is basically its own computer. And then this computer accesses the database, and this computer is then kind of accessible. So then my computer basically through SSH, which is like an encryption protocol to access certain, let's say, other computers. Basically SSH from my computer to this EC2 instance computer on Amazon, which then accesses the database. And oh man, I ran into like some issues there. Basically, my code editor, VS Code, I usually use to access anything, right? So SSH, basically I used it through VS Code. But the problem is that the very cheapest EC2 instance on Amazon, which I chose, is a very, very minimal computer, which meant that when my VS Code instance accessed that EC2 instance through SSH, through some extension I installed, it installed some server there, which made the instance crash. And it took me so long to figure this out because I was like, no way that this extension that like hundreds of thousands of people use every day crashes one of the most popular instances on AWS. Like there's just no way, right? But yeah, it turned out to be yes way. That's what it was. So yeah, after wasting some time on this, I eventually figured it out after also checking with a friend of mine because I was running out of ideas. I then basically just SSH'd into the server just with my normal console and set up the system. So like there's a tunnel basically, like a tunnel is like some fancy way of saying, okay, my computer connects to the EC2, which then routes the traffic to the database so I can actually indirectly access the private database through my computer. And that now all works. So yeah, great, amazing, right? We got the setup without making actual progress on the MVP, right? So what is left now is I know what data to collect. I have the setup for the database. I know how to connect to it and how to connect my front end to that database. Now I actually need to have data to connect to. And I started collecting the data manually first because I was like, 300 products, right? How hard can it be? I'll just, visit some YouTube channels that I like. I copy out the referral links that they have and then I'll put them in my database, right? Easy. Man, it took much longer than I expected. Like I did for like 30 minutes or an hour, I collected. I did this. I went to the website. I tried to copy the link. And the copying link and stuff works fine. The issue is when you want to have like the icon, for example, of the YouTube channel. You need to inspect the website, then you need to copy some icon. If you want the icon of the referral link, which is not there, right? You need to visit the website. Some websites don't have a nice logo on their website. Like they have a favicon. They call it favicon. It's like the small icon that you see in the top of your browser when you visit a website usually. But often the quality of that is like very bad. So you can't really scale that thing up. Some websites have it in higher quality, but often they have just like lower quality versions, which is bad. So then I go to Google, need to find the logo and stuff. So all of this took so much time, and I was like, okay, I can now grind for another 10 hours and get to 300 products. But I think at 10 hours, I'm much faster writing an actual scraper or some automated program that does this for me. So then what I was doing is like, we have like agents, right? So maybe there's like pre-made stuff that I can just use. So I tried GPT. GPT has like an agent mode. I tried that. Completely useless. It cannot even visit YouTube because YouTube has some stuff in place where it basically, like GPT can't even accept cookies, which basically makes it incapable of visiting YouTube. So completely useless. Then I tried a product from a friend of mine, like an ex-colleague from an incubator that I knew, and it worked much better. Much better in the sense that it was able to visit YouTube. I won't name the product here, but it was also really bad. Like, it was able to get the name of the YouTube channel and the icon of the YouTube channel. The icon of the YouTube channel, the link didn't work. And of 10 videos, it got one referral link. So it was really bad. And then I said, okay, the existing solutions, at least the ones that I know or found, are so bad that I'll just write my own scraper. I know it's not really a sustainable solution because, yeah, scrapers break. So eventually I will actually build my own AI solution. But for the moment and for the MVP, I'll just build a scraper in like 4 hours or something that does like the bare minimum, and like the things that are difficult to do with the scraper, I'll just do manually. So then I'll still save some hours. So that is basically what I will do next, but that's the status update on the website. So now we will get to the funding part of the update. Let's go to the main full screen for that. Okay, so funding. Last video I talked about there being some funding opportunities that seem to be very easy to get. So at least advertised to me was initially, there's a 70% chance that if you apply for this funding, you will get it. It is not really much funding. It was like 1.2k a month for like 12 months. So like we're talking about less than 15k in funding, which is in the startup world very little money. But that's fine because like the barrier to entry is supposedly also very low, right? You only need to submit a small paper that took me a few hours to write. And you also need to do a pitch in front of a jury. And there's 5 categories that you need to score 12 out of 15 points from. I will go a little bit in explaining how this works, but basically the pitch is not like the usual investor pitch, but the pitch is more to score the points. So I basically made a new pitch compared to what I had to try to score in these categories. I will quickly show you this pitch just so you get an idea of what I actually did. Let me quickly switch to that. So I do all my pitches in Canva, and you will also see that in a moment. All right. So first of all, the branding, like I branded to like the more like a search engine for discount codes from influencers, because I got some feedback on my first pitch that this might work better. Then what I also changed is I changed the story. So instead of talking about me and the problems and stuff, I now tell a story of a character called Christoph, who is a student. And this student is looking for a VPN, but 10 euros a month is too expensive for him because like he's a poor student basically. So he goes on Google and searches some discount codes, but gets spammed with ads basically on the sites that he visits. And eventually when he does find a code, it doesn't work. So he has to go back to Google and search again. And this is really annoying. So then Christoph finds PickBuy. This is a mock-up of the website, how I think it could look in the future. You see like some sponsored ones, the first two, and then you see from influencers other VPNs that are here just listed as examples. MrBeast doesn't actually make Surfshark ads, I think, but it's just an example, right, of like influencers that Christoph might know. Then I go into explaining what the unique selling points are, because a big part of the scoring for this funding is if your product has any innovation compared to like the competition or what is currently on the market. In this case, I showcase the AI aggregation of codes, something that I will eventually build. Then a real-time validation of the codes through agents, something I will build as well. Some feature where you connect your socials, so you can basically see in your search results the influencers that you already know and follow will show up on top of your search results, as well as when you click a product that you like, you get to see the small snippet of the video where the influencer talks about the product and his pitch basically of like why he likes it or whatever. Then a quick slide on the business model. This is also important for scoring on the pitch to understand, okay, how does the business make money? In our case, it's like the sponsored links and direct product placement of, in this example, NordVPN and ExpressVPN. It's just an example, right? Market. This slide is pretty much the same as last time, with the difference that now I took the Umsatz of Groupon instead of their estimated earnings and ads, which in this case is a much bigger number. Then I also adjusted this slide and made it a lot cleaner, and also took different scoring criteria. So in this case, we have a nice user experience and reliability, and making PickBuy score high on both of these criteria, and the competition score lower in each of these segments. I will not like explain so much in detail, I'll just go over, right? Then I have a team slide, which is another scoring criteria. Basically, okay, how capable is the team that you have to execute? And in this case, I'm by myself, but usually teams that apply for this type of funding are usually more than one person, like usually 2 or 3 people even. So in my case, like I list some stuff here, and then I also, show like, okay, future potential co-founders, like ideally a CMO that does more of the marketing and the CTO that helps with the programming, right? So I basically want to show that ideally I have more than myself working on this project, but that I myself could still build the MVP myself with the experience I have. Then we go to a slide that is also important, which is traction. So I basically show, hey, I did some interviews with people and basically mom tested them. The mom test is a very popular book in the startup culture that tries to give you a strategy for how to talk to customers to validate whether the problem that you think they have is actually true. So just a quick way to say this is, if you talk to your mom about a product idea you have, and go like, hey mom, I'm working on this like idea I have, and you know, your mom will always say like, oh yeah, that's really cool and stuff like this. So like you feel validated, right? But the truth is that your mom will almost always, when you say, hey, I'm working on this, tell you that this is great, even if the idea is terrible. So you need to find different ways to talk about problems to validate whether they are actually problems or if they're just in your head. And the general strategy for this is to ask people open questions about the problem without really talking about your product or your solution. So, for example, in this case, I would ask my mom, something like, hey, like, how do you do your online shopping? Hey, did you ever Google for discounts? Like, what was your experience like? These are like very general questions, and there's no really tip off of like, oh, like my son is working on this and I need to validate that he's working on something good or something like that. And ideally, you do this with a number of people and see how the responses are, and if you can validate the problem that you think is a problem, if other people also perceive it as that, and even better, if you can get them to see that this is valuable enough for them to pay for it. In my case, it's a free product, at least for the consumer. So that's really not my goal. It's more like, hey, do I think they would use such a website or such a service? Okay, and then this is also a slide a little bit about feasibility. So how feasible is it to have this product work out? So that's why there is some notes on like, okay, Outlook or whatever. And then the last slide is basically just an ask. Usually when you talk to investors, the ask is something like, hey, give me money, or like, hey, I will use your money for XYZ or something. In this case, it's mostly to get the 12 out of 15 points and to get the money for 12 months to, in my case, like work on this without having to rely on any outside capital, right? Fremdkapital is basically money that is in exchange for equity usually. And then asking for feedback. All right, that's the updated pitch. Now I'll tell you what went well on this and what went bad. What went well is the presentation and the story itself. Like the story about the character is much more memorable, especially with the style being coherent and the story being relatable enough that people are really taken on a story or journey. What didn't went well is that the way I spent my time preparing on this was badly spent. I initially tried to fit a lot of information into this presentation because there were like 5 points and I tried to score high on these 5 points. So I had also a whole other story about the monetization side of this. So why is this good for advertisers, for example? And then in the end needed to cut this whole part of the story because I only have 5 minutes to present. That's leading me to the second problem, which was I didn't practice enough. I basically spent so much time into making the presentation that I didn't spend enough time practicing it. And then when I started practicing, I noticed, okay, even with me cutting, it's still 6 minutes long. I need to cut, like start to like practice, write a script for sentences to say, because you only have 5 minutes. So you need to be extremely good in only saying the things that are relevant. Okay, I arrived there on time, everything. I was like even 15 minutes early. So preparation, this is fine. I arrived there, I opened the presentation, I start the presentation. Nice, confident, chill. Then I get to a slide with a picture and the picture doesn't work. The reason why is because for some reason, like caching or whatever, the picture did show in the preview, but then when I start the presentation, it didn't show. I asked them to restart the presentation. They were also fine with that. But at that point, I was like much more nervous and I fumbled a lot more with my words, which meant that I lost time during the presentation. And when I got to, let me see if I can go back here. Yeah. When I got to this slide halfway through, my time was up, which meant I had like 4 or 5 sentences left that I didn't get to say, which meant that this slide and this slide didn't get good presentation, which is really bad for the pitch. I think the pitch itself was still good until that point, but I think for a jury, if they don't hear a coherent 5-minute pitch with a nice ending, that always leaves a bad taste. And therefore, like I did a bad job. I basically fall 10, 20 seconds short, more like 20 seconds short. And it is due to a lack of preparation. So I should have spent less time on preparing the presentation, the actual slides, and more time practicing. Because even if the presentation would have been 30% worse in terms of content, the presentation itself would have been better. And yeah, I would have scored higher. Now, I already got the results. I got rejected for this funding. I don't know yet the reasons and which categories I basically scored high and which ones I scored low in. My guess is that the presentation itself was a major contributing factor to that, but I asked for feedback and I don't know that feedback yet. So probably in the next update, I'll let you know about that. So yeah, that's that. That's unfortunate, but that's the update on funding at this stage. Then the last update will be on the incubation programs that I applied to. There is 2 of them. The first one is called Pioneers Club. And the reason why I applied to that is because I like the concept of it a lot. The concept is basically that every week or every 2 weeks, you post an update that just consists of 3 pointers. What did you achieve? The most important things in 3 points. And investors are constantly watching your progress. And if they like what you're doing, they like the idea and they like the progress, at any point they can come to you and say like, yo, like I want to invest or whatever. They also at the end of the program have a pitch day, I believe, but less focus is on the pitch and much more focus is on the progress that you've made across the month that you've worked on the product. So the project starts actually at the end of August and runs throughout, I think, until November or something. And I already got accepted, which is amazing, great. Like I love this program concept. And it's a nice way to show, hey, I can deliver, I can show progress, and I can potentially convince investors just by the work I do and not so much about like the one-time 5-minute pitch that I can more easily mess up. Okay, that's the first one. The second incubator I applied to already some time back, but now had like the last interview was basically the last interview, some more questions, basically 1.5 hours of some general startup questions, some more specific to my current business idea. And this incubator is more traditional in the sense that you have 3 months where you work on the product and try to find co-founders. And I still look for co-founders. I actually ideally would have like one person, ideally someone that has some experience with writing AI agents that can collaborate with me on this. But I would also not mind a CEO type co-founder that takes care of the marketing fundraising department, and I focus on developing the product and writing the AI stuff. So I didn't get accepted for that yet, but they had 3 stages, I think. So an application stage where you fill out some questionnaire, then a first work trial, a second work trial, and now this final interview. And I'm now at this final interview stage. The incubator itself has a strong impact focus, meaning that the goal of this incubator is actually to sign something that is called a founder's pledge. A founder's pledge is a promise that if you exit your company, meaning you sell the company, you donate a large portion of the value of the exit that you would personally receive to charitable causes. I am wanting to do this anyway for my business. Like, it's the reason why I want to do the business, is to earn money, not so much for myself to buy like a big house or a yacht or something, but to have money to either start more businesses that solve problems that people care about, and to be able to donate money to effective charities and causes that I support. So this aligns with my motivation to do this in the first place, and that's why I like this idea a lot. And ideally, the co-founders that I find there have the same mindset, which means that since I split my equity in half by working with another person, if that person also is impact-minded and wants to donate and do impactful stuff in the world, that amplifies the impact that I have with the startup as well. So I like that idea a lot, and I hope that I get accepted for that. That program starts in January next year, and I think there is a 1 month period in person in London, and the rest is remote. I think it's quite important to be in person to meet a co-founder and basically check out in person if you're vibing well, if you get along, if the person is compatible with you. And much of that can only be really felt in person, I think. But I will hear for this, I think I will hear back only in September, so it might still take a bit until I can give you an update. All right, these are the major updates from the last 2 weeks. When I look back at my goals for the last, like that I stated in my last update video for this one, I would have liked to make more progress on the products, basically to already have a 300 products list, which I don't have. The main reason for that, I think, is that I spent too much time likely on the pitch for the funding. Yeah, but the next 2 weeks I don't have anything like that lined up, so I have more time to work on the product, which means in 2 weeks I should actually have the MVP. I think that's like in 1 week I have the list of products completed at least, and in the week after that I have connected the front end to the back end to the database, which means that you can actually use the search and search for the few products that are then in the database. So this should all work at this point, and then the MVP is done. So that would be the next big milestone, to do that in the next 2 weeks. And by that time, the other incubator that I'm part of now, the Pioneers Club, will have started as well. So I will also share updates there. So yeah, I think that's the wrap for this bi-weekly update. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and I would see you latest in 2 weeks, ideally with an MVP at this point. Peace.